Hello one and all, my name is Sean Splains and this is Civilization 7. After some feedback on my previous video, I wanted to explain a few elements surrounding the commanders in more detail here, so I can focus purely on war in our next episode, closing out Antiquity. I'd like to do a quick and concise explanation of the commander upgrades and commendations, as well as what I would recommend based on your circumstances and what kind of game that you're trying to play out. So if we click on our Trung Nhi here and go into our upgrades, we've got 5 different trees on the commanders, although the Trung Nhi has its own special list, which I'll go down as well. But if we're working from left to right, we have the Bastion Tree, which starts with +2 combat strength for land units within the command radius when defending. So it's important to notice that that says when defending, so you only get that +2 when you are being attacked by the opponent, but not when you're attacking them. And I think this is always a really good one to go for, either first or second. Although I didn't do it in this situation because I'm using multiple commanders and they all have their different roles, and as we saw in the first episode, the manoeuvre was more important. But generally, if I'm going for an aggressive or defensive playstyle, I will always pick the +2 for defending, because 9 times out of 10, unless you're playing a really aggressive civ, like Persia, like I am, who specifically have bonuses when attacking, you should always choose to defend because you'll get naturally more bonuses and it'll be easier to kill the opponent. You can also rest and heal 10 HP every turn, or if you're in your own territory, 15 HP every single turn whilst they're attacking you, and they just have to suffer every time. We go into the second one, and we've got Bulwark, which allows you to create fortifications 1 turn faster, it says, but what that means is instantly. And this is also incredibly important if you are more aggressive and you're attacking other people, because as much as it says 1 turn faster, the only way that you can complete fortifications is if you do not get attacked for 2 turns. And then at the end of your second turn, the fortifications are complete. If you get attacked during that time, it interrupts the fortification and you don't ever get to build it. So being able to complete them instantly is actually really, really strong and underrated. And the next one definitely is +3 combat strength from fortification for land units within the command radius. Generally, you already get a bonus for being in the fortification, so having that extra +3 is really handy to have. And then at the bottom here we have Resolute. Land units within the command radius heal 5 HP after attacking, which, as I mentioned in my last video, is especially good with Persia because the Immortals actually heal 15 when they kill something. So in this case they would heal 20, but all units, including archers, any land unit that attacks from the radius will get the +5 HP. Here, going back a bit, we have Hold the Line and Garrison, which both are more for when you're defending within your own land and not when you're attacking. So I will rarely pick these up unless I'm playing a very defensive game. So you get +2 combat strength for land units stationed on a district within the command radius, and +10 HP to fortified districts in the city when stationed on the city centre. So again, these are both useful when you're within the city centre, but if you aren't, then there's no point ever taking them. If we move over to the Assault Tree, we have one of the generally most popular ones. Units can move after unpacking from this commander. Most people say this is probably the best ability in the game. It has its uses, but I wouldn't say it's the most important in every scenario. Again, I would say if you're playing aggressively, it's very good. Or even when you're defending, you're trying to manoeuvre your units in and out of the commander to help with their mobility. It's very good, but I wouldn't say it's essential in every build. Down the left hand side we have +2 combat strength for infantry when attacking, +3 combat strength for cavalry when attacking, and then here we have +2 combat strength for ranged units when attacking, and +3 for siege when attacking. And it's important to note that all of these are purely when you're the attacker, and again this top one is for only when you're defending. So always keep an eye on the wording and how it'll affect things. And then at the bottom we have infantry and cavalry within the command radius have the first strike ability, meaning they get +5 combat strength when at full health. This now has become a lot stronger compared to what it was before, because we now have Sengoku Japan in the game. And I will highlight this personally in the next couple of episodes in this series. Because your samurai act as if they're at full health all the time, no matter how much health they have, this +5 combat strength is permanently applied to Sengoku Japan. So this is now insanely strong. It used to be okay because it's hard to keep your units at full health. I would say the other instance that it's very good is when you're playing Moria, because they can fully heal every time you hit a celebration, so they're quite often at full health. But generally, unless you're playing Moria or Sengoku Japan, this isn't that great as an individual ability, but obviously getting to the bottom of the tree so you can get your commendations very good. Next we have the logistics tree, which from what I've heard, and part of the reason I'm making this video, people just never really pick these options and aren't entirely sure what they do, as well as maneuver. I feel like the right three in general don't get picked often enough, but I feel like logistics, there was some surprising comments I got. So I'll start with the top left. We have Quartermaster, plus 1 gold for each unit packed into this commander. And the term packed just means when we come out of the commander and we have a look and we see we've got one unit, well, that's one unit that's on their way. We have 5 units that are within this commander. So that means I'm getting 5 gold per turn because they are packed into this commander, which is what this little assemble army button does, which we can then deploy them. And if we deploy them and we get rid of all of them, we would no longer be making that 5 instantly in that case. So that's what that refers to. On the right hand side of that, we have plus 15% production towards training land units when stationed on a district. This again is good when you are sitting within your own city district and you're not on the attack. So this is a very niche pick and I would very rarely pick it myself. Here's probably, in my opinion, the strongest ability in the entire game. If we're going to pick any of these over the initiative and assault, I would say regiments is better because you get your plus 2 slots giving you more units to use, and you get the faster reinforcements, which, as I mentioned last time, reduces the turn count to get to you by about a quarter or a third. So 7 turns goes down to 4, 8 goes down to 5. It's not always 3 turns, sometimes it's 2 turns because they can't get to you instantly. So if you're 2 turns away and you use this, it'll probably chop it down to 1 because it always is on a percentage basis. But this is still very good to have the extra 2 slots. Here we have Field Medic. Land units within the command radius gain plus 5 healing in enemy and neutral territory. This is amazing when you're going on conquests because you're rarely in your own territory. And a lot of the time, like I said, if you're playing defensively, which means you're attacking the enemy but you're just parking in their territory and forcing them to hit you to weaken themselves, you can be healing for 15 HP whilst they are hitting you. And you're probably only taking 20, so you're only like overall losing 5 HP a turn, so you can get hit 20 times before you die. This is very strong. Field Medic is very good. On the other hand, we have Looting, which, as I mentioned previously in the last video, it isn't as strong all the time because of the lack of consistency, because you're not always pillaging, and you're especially not always pillaging tiles that are going to give you health. So that's something to keep in mind. It is good, but it's nowhere near as good overall as Field Medic. And then lastly we have Survival Training, which again is a very strong ability. Land units within the command radius gain the Commando ability. Terrain combat bonuses are doubled, and infantry units can move and attack through cliffs. This helps with your movement because you can move through the cliffs and you don't have to go around them, which usually would take an extra tile movement. You can attack through the cliffs without any penalty, which is very good when you're trying to surround a unit and you want to kill them. And also the doubling of the terrain combat bonuses means instead of getting plus 2 or plus 3 in certain situations, you're getting plus 4 or plus 6, which can heavily increase the longevity of your units and really help with the campaign that you're fighting. Moving over into the maneuver tree, we have mobility as the first one. This commander has plus 1 movement while on land and ignores terrain movement restrictions when packed. This is excellent when you're trying to maneuver around most of the map, as I would say logically about 50% of the land, probably more, has either rough terrain or has trees or has rivers or has floodplains, and usually those would end movement or take 2 away from your movement rather than 1 in certain situations depending on what civ you are. But this just ignores everything, so you're moving across any land tile as if it's 1 movement cost. And this, as we saw in the last episode, can help you just get from one side of the map to the other really fast. The only downside is it doesn't apply to water, so when you go into a navigable river, that still takes up your whole turn, and then moving out of the navigable river still takes your whole turn. But apart from that, this is excellent early game especially. On the right we have redeploy. Opponents have -2 flanking bonuses when attacking land units within the command radius, so this is a really good defensive option. If the opponent has 2 units that are hitting you from different positions, they no longer get flanking bonus. And on the other side we have the opposite, where you have a bonus to your flanking of +2 for harassment. Down below we have Amphibious, which again is another incredibly useful ability to have if you're attacking people, especially in the situation we're going to be facing in this current game, but we won't see until next time. We have land units within the command radius suffer no combat penalties when attacking while embarked. It costs 1 movement to embark and disembark. So like I said, instead of taking up all of your movement, it only costs 1. So pairing Amphibious with the mobility means you can move across the whole map for 1 movement per position. I've not worked it out very well, but you can move 1 tile and it only costs 1 movement. We'll go with that. Here we have Pathfinder. Land units within the command radius ignore terrain movement restrictions. So this means it doesn't just apply to the commander, it also applies to all of the units around them, which can be really useful because again, the rough terrain and the woodlands can tend to be surrounding the capitals that you're trying to take down. And lastly, we have Area Denial. So the command radius applies zone of control to enemy land units. When you are going up against enemy land units, thankfully now due to modern updates of the game, we can see zone of control. So when you are going against an enemy warrior and they have little red zigzaggy lines on the tiles around them, that is their area, which is a zone of control. So if you step within that zone of control, you can no longer step out of it without using or you can't step into it without using all of your movement, When you move into it and you still have 1 movement, you're only allowed to attack. You're not allowed to move away again, which can be really frustrating when you're scouting and you accidentally walk into it and then you can't escape and then you lose your scout. But this means that you do the same thing, so enemy scouts won't be able to get away from you. Enemy chariots can walk into your position and they will not be able to move away. It can really help to slow them down tactically and stop them getting to specific units. So lastly, we'll go on to talking about the Trung Nhi specific tree, and then I'll talk about what this usually looks like in a normal commander afterwards. But for the Trung Nhi specifically, we have Jungle Warfare, plus 5 combat strength for land units in tropical terrain in the command radius, and plus 3 damage for Heroic Assault. So Heroic Assault is the special ability that I've shown before with the Trung Nhi, where it gets to attack an enemy once every 3 turns. This just gives it more damage, as do all of these promotions. That's just a passive effect of them. So from that point, I'll just talk about the main thing. So the plus 5 combat strength in the tropical is really good if you are defending specifically, or if you want to attack people that are on your equatorial line. If you're obviously going out with that, you no longer get this. So I tend to leave this bonus until last, or at least until I'm attacking somebody that's in the tropical terrain, and then it becomes useful. On the left hand side we have Mettle and Courage, plus 5 combat strength for land units in the command radius when in friendly territory. So again, if you pair both of these, if you're playing a defensive game, you pick up Steadfast, Jungle Warfare and Mettle and Courage, you're getting plus 12 combat strength when defending, which is a ridiculous amount to have. Most early game units only have 20 damage, or if it's the actual AI that's attacking you and they get their plus 8 from being on deity difficulty, they have 33. You can have plus 12 and be outpacing them. You're automatically outpacing deity by having 2 bonuses, which is crazy. Further going down this tree, we have Hai Ba Trung, plus 15 combat strength for this commander when defending, which is really good for when you don't have a unit for some reason. It can happen, you lose a unit, or maybe you move into a zone of control and you forget to unpack. You've got a lot more defense than most other commanders and you probably won't die in 1 turn. Here we have plus 5 combat strength with coordinated attack and focus fire, and then plus 10 damage for Heroic Assault. This is specifically really good for this commander compared to others because, as I will show you in a minute, the other commanders have these split into 2 different points, so you would need to get 2 different level ups to get the plus 5 on coordinated attack and then the plus 5 into focus fire. Then we have Lac Rebellion, plus 3 combat strength for land units in the command radius when there are at least 2 enemy units adjacent to Trung Nhi. Again, this is more of a defensive play, as you would expect people to attack you in pincer attacks and stuff. So if you paired that, with this, we would have 15 overall. Again, just the stacking that you can get defensively with a Trung Nhi commander is insane. And then lastly, we have 65 strongholds, plus 5 combat strength against fortified districts for land units in this command radius. So as much as this is really, really good, I don't tend to go down this tree all that often. So that's why I haven't picked it up yet in my game. I feel like there's other things that are more important, but I will probably push for this soon. The plus 5 combat strength against fortified districts is really strong, and it's hard to pass it up. It's hard to get it from other things. There's not that many bonuses within the game that gives you damage against fortified districts, but this is a very effective one. So as I mentioned, the Bastion, Assault, Logistics and Maneuver trees are all the same on your normal commanders, but the one that's different is instead of Trung Nhi we have Leadership. So the first one is actually really important for passive and defensive games. If you're not really planning on attacking anyone, you could at least get a commander or two. Just get one level up, which you can get quite easily from hitting a city-state unit like 3 or 4 times, and then you get plus 5% to all yields except happiness when stationed in a settlement on a district. And that plus 5% can really add up in mid-game and late game when you've got, let's say, 100 production, and then all of a sudden you're adding another 5 production, you're adding 5 food, you're adding 5 gold, you're adding 5 science, 5 culture, all at once. So you're getting like plus 40 yields from this one ability, and you can do that multiple times in multiple settlements if you have more than one commander that's got this. So that's a really good option if you don't really plan on attacking and you don't see the point in getting these other options. Secondly, we have Field Commission. Land units within the command radius can be upgraded as if in friendly territory and heal 10 HP when upgraded. Again, going back to how good Field Medic is and how you get to heal more in neutral territory, being able to upgrade your units, especially with how much time this saves, is very, very strong. When you think about it, if you're attacking and you don't think you're going to take the settlement because maybe they've outpaced you and the AI now has horsemen but you're still on chariots and you're worried, you could make chariots, but that would involve you having to go all the way back to your own settlement, which is, let's say, 4 or 5 movement turns away, which makes you lose all momentum in the war. This is what fixes that. You're allowed to heal as well as upgrading, and it just really helps you out. So I would say that this is a very strong ability. Old Guard gives you plus 10 combat strength for this commander when defending, so similar to the Trung Nhi one but not quite as strong. Resilience plus 50% reduction in this commander's recovery time. So to give you some clarity on what this really means, usually it takes 20 turns to get your commander to respawn on standard speed in your capital, but this just brings it down to 10, and then on other speeds that will change. So I can't do the maths on quick off the top of my head, but on online speed that would be 10 turns and you cut it down to 5. And then at the bottom here, like I said, focus fire and command and coordinated attack is split into plus 5 on each end rather than being in one ability. But overall it's the same amount of points to get through the tree. So lastly, I'll talk about commendations, and then I'll talk about what my preference would be overall for each kind of build that you're trying to do. So going from left to right, we have Valor. Gain the Grant Second Wind ability. Grant a land unit within the command radius 1 extra attack and 2 movement points. I would generally say this one's very good to get on most commanders as your second point, because like I mentioned before, we always want one commander to have order within each kind of attacking force. If you split your commanders into groups of 2 or 3, you want one of those commanders in every single force to have order, because having plus 5 is really strong. Then the second one I would go for would usually be Valor. Giving yourself the ability to attack again is very, very good, and I don't think I need to over-explain why. Duty, gain the Heroic Assault ability, deal direct damage to a unit in the command radius that has the same domain as the commander. So again, this is very similar to the Heroic Assault on the Trung Nhi. This just allows other commanders to be able to do it. And something I should have mentioned while we're on that is instead of having that commendation on the Trung Nhi, because it already has Heroic Assault, that just gives it an extra 30 damage for it. So coming back to the normal commanders, we have Service, which gives you plus 1 movement for all land units within the command radius, and then plus 1 command radius from merit. And as we've already mentioned, we get plus 5 combat strength for all land units from order. So now talking about general builds and what I would do, as I've kind of alluded to before now, I always personally like to go down the Bastion Tree for at least these two when I'm attacking, because being able to build your fortifications instantly, it says 1 turn less. So if I click on these immortals who don't currently have fortifications and I click fortify, they've instantly built their fortifications and they don't need to wait any more turns, and they instantly get the bonus of it, fortifications completed, as it says. So as much as that says 1 turn less, like I said, the main reason that's so important is not only do you build them instantly, so you're instantly getting the bonus of them, if you get attacked, you just never get to build the fortifications, so it's a waste of a turn almost otherwise. So this is imperative if you're going to be attacking people. I would then probably get initiative, because being able to unpack and pack again is very useful, especially because you can move units tactically by doing that. You can move them from one tile into the commander and then move them to the other side of the commander, and instead of that taking 2 movement like it usually would, it only takes up 1. And then after that I would probably guarantee getting regiments and get the +2 unit slots and get faster reinforcements. I feel like regiments, initiative and bulwark are my 3 most important abilities to get early on. Ideally, I tend to try and do 5 commanders and go through every tree and then improve their command radius so that they are reaching all of the land units, and you're effectively getting the bonuses of every skill tree across all of your land units. But outside of that, I would probably split my commanders into 3s and then attack in different directions if I need to, but generally starting 1 war at a time or not having to defend is the best way to try and play the game, in my opinion. Lastly, as a kind of base note, I'll just say that if you're playing defensively and you do not ever intend to attack, picking up your steadfast and probably your quartermaster to get some extra gold from packing units into the commander, and then going down your right hand tree whether you've got the Trung Nhi or not. It gives you some more defense and it helps you get more yields, which is obviously more important. And then the last thing I want to discuss quickly is the reinforce army button and the add to commander. This was something I didn't explain in the last episode, and someone actually mentioned to me that they didn't know they could do this in the game. So even though I've already showed you in the last episode it happening, I thought it's just important to mention it again now, because I've also not mentioned the parameters around it. So if we have a unit, we unfortunately don't have one just now, but if I had a unit here, I could press on the reinforce army button and then it would highlight the available commanders that I can send them to. What dictates that is your unit must be at full HP, they must be within your own friendly territory borders, and the commander that they are being sent to must not be in zone of control or be under pressure of being attacked. They can be in neutral territory, that's totally fine, but they can't be in zone of control, and you have to have a fully healed unit. So I feel like it's important to mention that just so people know, since I didn't fully explain it last time. And that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I am looking forward to doing the next episode and hopefully closing this out and taking out Chang'an. Thank you for joining me in this little mini episode. I have been Sean's Plains, and I'll see you in the next one.